Super panel, Jack Carr, former Navy SEAL, author of Targeted Beirut, Elika Laban, Iranian activist Marc Short, former Trump White House legislative director. Good to see all of you. Normally it's ladies first, but I want to start with Jack, Target Beirut. And this is the story I would encourage everyone to read of the Beirut barracks bombing, Iran's really first suicide bomb attack against America. Hezbollah killed well over 200 American service members. Jack, you look at that polling about how Americans feel about the attacks on Iran. Do you think Americans really understand, A, how evil Iran is, and B, the lengths they will go to try and, as they chant, death to America?
Well, I'm curious what that kind of polling would have looked like in October of 1983 or in April of 1983 when our embassy was hit first, killed 63 people, 17 Americans, many of them working for the CIA. Then we go into a very bloody summer where our Marines are there as peacekeepers in Lebanon. And then we get to October 1983, 241 Americans. The Marines had not lost that many people in a single day since Iwo Jima in World War II. But after that, this is where I'm curious about how the polling would have played out. We still were under that specter of Vietnam that loomed large over the Reagan administration. But what they did was rely on a lot of tough talk in the aftermath of that event. And then we left not the region, but Lebanon as quietly as you can in early 1984. So we taught the enemy that terrorism works. So I'm very curious if we had committed to avenging the not just avenging the Marines and the servicemen killed in October 1983 and in April, but teaching another lesson to not just those who want to do us harm in the Middle East, but the world. And we would have taught them that terrorism doesn't work if we did something more akin to what the Israelis did after Munich in the early 70s. With Operation Wrath of God. If we had done something like that, and if we had utilized our special operations and intelligence capabilities to go after those responsible, which were Iranian proxy forces. So we taught the world that terrorism works, and specifically we taught Iran that proxy terrorist forces work.
Yeah, and we've paid the price in American lives since then, and this, to your point, is avenging that. Beginning of the avenge of that. Elika, speaking of Iran and inside Iran, CNN's reporting that CIA teams in Erbil, Iraq, that's the northern part of Iraq where the Kurds are training Kurdish fighters and Kurdish resistance organizations to begin an Iranian revolution inside the Kurdish side of Iran. The Kurds are historically quite Western friendly, quite friendly to the United States. Is that the way that the overthrowing of the Iranian regime needs to start?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the people up until now have been unarmed. You know, this entire time that we've been asking for help to the international community, the overwhelming response that we've been gotten is that Iranians need to free themselves. Now, obviously, we know this is has never been a proportionate fight. You cannot fight unarmed against people using military grade weapons against you. And so from the very beginning, these were one of the simple asks. Why don't we arm the people? There's obviously been a little bit of contention about what happens when you arm the people in terms of other extremist groups potentially rising to power with the use of those arms. But I think it all depends on really how we envision this regime change happening. If this regime change is going to happen as an external operation driven by the United States and Israel, then we need to place full faith and confidence behind that military campaign to remove this regime. But if it's a joint effort, and if it is a joint effort that needs to come from the people, then those people will have to be armed in order to facilitate the overthrow of the regime.
Yeah, well, President Trump and others have already said that it is going to have to come from inside. To your point, you've got to train people, you've got to support them, and you've got to provide them with weapons. Evidently, they've already been provided with Starlinks. Marc Short, to you. There is this war of words now, a public relations war. Can President Trump and his cabinet and some friendly Republicans convince Americans in the midst of this war of why we need to fight it?
Leland, yes, he can. I think that this is a noble cause, and the president, I think if he's successful here, it could transform the Middle East for generations to come. Not only are millions of Iranians excited about the Ayatollah being eliminated and have an opportunity to change their country, as y'all have said, it's been 47 years of a war against the West, whether or not it was Beirut, the embassy in Iran, whether or not it's been the funding of Hamas and Hezbollah, the Houthis, targeted assassination attempts on American leaders. They have been trying to kill Americans for 47 years, and the West.
You don't need to convince me of that, Mark. But I agree. Why is that message so lost?
Leland, I think that... Well, because, Leland, I think that part of the challenge is that the president's campaign rhetoric in 24 would have led American voters to think the exact opposite of this. And so, as you said in your monologue, that there could have been a longer lead into this, explaining the case for why to Americans this is important, not just to the Middle East, but to America's national security. And so, yeah, I think the president has an innate ability to win messaging wars. And so I think that traditionally you were right. It would have been a messaging campaign ahead of any sort of action, kinetic action that was taken. But can he still convince Americans about this? Yes. But I think the second challenge he has, Leland, also is that in the midst of this midterm cycle, there's an affordability crisis. And if energy prices continue to spike and skyrocket, and it'll feed the narrative on inflation that I think runs counter to what he's trying to convince Americans regarding his trade policy and other initiatives of trying to lower costs. And so I think those are a couple of headwinds for him. But can he? Yes, he can.
Well, inflation will come from energy prices, and that is if the Iranians are successful in closing the Strait of Hormuz. It's about a 25-mile wide piece of water.
Even if they're not.
Yeah, well, they've been successful.
Even if they're not. You've already had the LNG facilities in Qatar closed down. You have other, oil facilities getting blown up. And so, yes, if the Straits of Hormuz are closed, it'll be even higher. But you're still going to see elevated energy prices.
Right now, they are closed. We have the animation up right now, not because the Iranians have been able to, but because the insurance companies won't insure any ships that go through them. Jack, to you, go back to your experience as a Navy SEAL mixed with a New York Times #1 best-selling author. Those two things, this story of closing the Strait of Hormuz, is the Navy ready to protect American shipping or worldwide shipping going through there?
I would think that would have been thought through ahead of time, because it's one of the most likely courses of action is that waterway is going to experience some pressure. So taking over the gas and oil platforms and making sure that shipping continues, not unabated probably, because there's so much happening in that part of the world, but continues as unabated as possible. I'm sure would have been part of the planning process here. But there's so many things at play. I mean, this has been a pillar of American policy for multiple administrations. Both parties has been keeping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. They've got different ways of doing that. And so my question really is, and it's a question to me as well, is how close do you let them get to having that? Is it 5 years? Is it 1 year? Is it 6 months? Is it 2 weeks? What is palatable to the American people when it comes from an explanation standpoint? And then how much do you trust that intelligence? So those are questions for all of us.
Elika, where is the celebrations and the protests that we were led to believe are going to happen? We're all used to things happening in a cable news cycle and on our Twitter feeds. Is it too early to be asking why aren't the Iranian people in the streets?
You're talking about the people inside Iran?
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's a war right now inside Iran, but actually the celebrations are everywhere. If you look on social media, they are celebrating from inside their homes right now. They're celebrating from their apartments. They're screaming in celebration for the death of the supreme leader. But at the same time, you have to remember that both Donald Trump, President Trump, and the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi both instructed that Iranians should be staying inside their homes right now because it's very dangerous outside.
Well, that's a good point.
So it's during the campaign.
Yeah, you're gonna have to see something. It's not going to happen in days. It's going to happen in weeks or months. Marc Short, Jack Carr, Elika Lamont, thank you all very much.